All right, we got lights. Check 1, 2. What's up, guys? I got a brand new video for you today, and today we got to talk about something that's kind of set the internet ablaze in the photography YouTube world last week, and that's talking about RAW versus JPEG. And we got one channel making a video saying why they think this is better than this, and another channel shooting back at them saying they're wrong, and then that channel coming back saying I didn't say that or whatever. But the thing is, one channel actually kind of showed what the differences are between RAW and JPEG, and the other channels that have been saying what they want to say have been kind of maybe confusing beginners without even actually showing them what's going on. So in this video, it's kind of for beginners. I know a lot of the people that follow me on this channel know their way around a camera and know the differences between RAW and JPEG, but I think we just need to show people the difference. And I found some files that I think are good to kind of compare what you can do with a JPEG versus what you can do with a RAW file, and why I personally think you need to shoot RAW and JPEG, and why I usually always use the RAW file. So anyway, I'm not gonna just talk, I'm gonna show, so let's get on the computer. Okay, so we're at the computer. What I wanna do is I'm gonna go through about 4 different files shot across different time periods of when I was shooting. This is different cameras. We've got, I think this is a 5D Mark II. We'll check the info on it here. Yeah, 5D Mark II. This was probably an XT2. Yeah, XT2. This was an X100F. And this was actually just taken this summer. The other one was taken last summer. And this shot was taken back in 2015. And this one was taken with an A7R II back in the start of 2016. So 4 different cameras, and we're gonna look at how each one handles JPEGs and RAWs. And we're gonna go in Lightroom. These were all high dynamic range situations where we have highlights and shadows. And I wanna show you what a JPEG can't do that a RAW file can do. So right here, we're looking at the JPEG file. This is the RAW file, and you might think that it's a little bit more overblown. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull the highlights back and see how much we can actually get back in detail, and then do the exact same thing to the RAW file. So going in here to pull the highlights back, so you start getting hot spots like this, where the camera completely blew the detail right out of the shot, and there's not much we can do with that. So going with the shadows here, I'd darken this up a little bit, bring the exposure back down a tiny bit, add a bit more warmth to it. Now, when I apply these to the RAW file, it's gonna be even more saturated because this was sort of a desaturated file. But the thing is, we're already seeing around the hands here, completely blown out, no detail left. I've got the highlights cranked right back as far as I can go, and that detail is completely gone. So I chose this file for this reason, to show you what's gonna happen when we open up the RAW file. So I'm gonna copy these settings, and we're gonna paste these to the RAW file. And you can already see how much more detail is still in here. I'm gonna pull the yellows back a bit. Now, this looks like it's a little bit more blown out, but if I pull the highlights back even more, you can start to see some more detail coming back. The hands, they're not blown out. We have all this detail in the hands here. Obviously, when you pull the highlights back up, it starts to get blown, but if you pull this back, that detail's there. And this is a 5D Mark II, and we know that the dynamic range on that camera isn't maybe that amazing, but shooting in RAW pretty much saved this shot. We go back to the JPEG, and you can just see that it's completely blown out here. If we add a bit more warmth, and if we just add a little bit more saturation to this, we can bring it closer to what the RAW file is doing with the color. Obviously, it's not that close. They're quite a bit different, but the thing I wanna show here is highlights versus shadows. So to me, I wouldn't deliver that file, that's terrible. But because I shot RAW, I was able to actually save the file, and it fixes it. So let's move on to another shot. This is a camera that has amazing dynamic range. This is the Sony A7R II. And this shot, I kind of intentionally shot it this way with the sun coming in through the back. Looking at this shot, it's hard to tell any detail because the highlights have just kind of washed the shot out. Looking at the highlights in the cloth here, completely blown out. We pull these highlights back. It brings a little bit back, but not a lot. We can pull the exposure down. Bring the contrast up a bit. And then we can pull the shadows down just to kind of make that pop a bit better. And then bump the clarity. But really, that's all we could do. It's not amazing, but it's also not the worst. And what I don't like is this is all blown out. This is all blown out. But I mean, because it's the A7R II, the JPEGs may have a bit more information in them. They're 42 megapixels. And this is about as good as we can get with this. Now, if we copy this and paste these to the RAW file, now you can see the detail in the cloth here now. Her skin tone looks more natural. It looks kind of crappy in this. It actually looks really pale and like blotchy. It doesn't look natural. But when we come back to the raw file, all those skin tones are nice and warm. And you may be able to match it up in the JPEG if you play around with it a bit more, but what I like is I'm seeing all the detail in the cloth here, and the shot's not completely ruined. We compare these two side by side. So you've got the raw file on the right, JPEG on the left. Look at the detail that's in here that's missing out of the JPEG. Again, down here, completely blown out, not bad. So another shot here showing overblown highlights. And I did this to not underexpose them because I knew that I could pull some of those highlights back. So right here, we're looking at the JPEG. We're going to develop. And we're gonna pull the highlights back. Now you're getting a bit of this water detail, but the sky is completely gone. Pull the exposure down, maybe bump the shadows up a little bit. Now this is the X-T2, and this camera has pretty good dynamic range. As you can see, we got the shadows to come back, but not so much with our highlights in the sky. Now when we copy these settings and we paste them on the raw file, I'm pretty sure we're gonna see the sky detail, yeah. So now we can start to see some of the sky detail up here. Bringing the exposure back. Bringing those shadows back up. Now I'm not gonna say this is perfect, but you have a way more warm shot. It doesn't feel so overexposed and harsh. If you go back to the JPEG, you see what I mean? There's no detail in the sky. With the raw file, we get some detail. The water actually looks less chunky and, I don't know, oversaturated in the highlights. Like look right in here, this doesn't really look all that great. But on the raw file, all that detail's in there. Compare these two, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. This time the raw file's on the left, JPEG's on the right. You can see so much more detail in here than you can in here, and you're starting to get some weird artifacting and noise that you won't get with the raw file. So as you can kind of see, there's a little trend here, why you should shoot raw versus JPEG. I don't care if you're a beginner, I don't care if you're a professional. It just doesn't make sense to shoot JPEG when your camera has the ability to do both at the same time. Okay, to not drag this video out any longer, we're gonna look at one more file. So we're looking at the raw file here, and this is the JPEG. You know the sky is not coming back from the JPEG, but I'll show you anyways how much I can actually take back. So it's coming back, but it looks really stupid and kind of chunky and fake. We pull these shadows back out, but I mean, I'm already seeing some weird stuff like on the arm here. This just looks bad. It's because I'm pushing the JPEG way too far. Now, if we copy these settings and apply them to the raw file, you can see that it looks a little bit more natural. These shadows don't need to actually go that far. You can pull them back a little bit. And if we pull these highlights down, you can see cloud detail in the blue sky. I don't know how far I want to pull it because you're actually not going to be able to go too far, because I actually did blow the highlights out here and I knew that that was not going to be recoverable. But it still looks pretty cool. You can pull these shadows out a little bit more, bump the exposure, play with the shadows until you find something that you kind of like the look of. We're not getting any weird artifacting in the arm like we were. So if I played around with that a bit longer, I could probably get it perfect. And the JPEG file is kind of trashy. Because all the settings are baked into the JPEG, we don't really have that data to manipulate like we do with the raw files. All right, so for many of you that actually know the difference between RAW and JPEG, sorry for putting you through that, but at least you maybe get a better understanding of what you can do. And for beginners, this is kind of an easier way to show you what's going on between JPEGs and RAWs versus just blabbing on about it and calling names. I think that this is a better way of just kind of showing the proof of what you can do. I personally shoot RAW and JPEG. I don't care what you shoot. You can shoot JPEG all day long. You can shoot RAW all day long. You can shoot just RAW. You can shoot just JPEG. You have the choice. Anyway, hopefully this video kind of made sense and I don't get any backlash. I just kind of showed you why I think that you should shoot RAW, and there's no reason to not shoot RAW unless you need to nail off a million shots and your camera can't handle the buffer of shooting RAW and JPEG. There's lots of awesome cameras out there that can, like the D500. That thing has an amazing buffer, and the A9 apparently, I've never used it. Those cameras are expensive, so I think that you should always be shooting RAW and JPEG. And the funny thing is, if I pull up a file that I shot 7, 8, 9 years ago, I was shooting RAW and JPEG. So The excuse of not having enough data, like hard drives and stuff like that, is kind of stupid because we were shooting RAW and JPEG back in the day anyway. So anyway, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, give it a thumbs down twice. I'll see you in the next one.